Hey, what's up, Good Life? Thanks for joining me for today's 128 moment. I want to tell you today about the night that the lights went out in New York City. Now, New York City's never been accused of being this quiet, sleepy town, but tensions were particularly high during the summer of 1977. There'd been an economic downturn nationwide, and it really devastated the city, but the people who lived there were just living in fear because the Son of Sam murders were still going on. But the pressure reached a boiling point on the night of July 13. As the Northeast had a brutal heat wave, everybody had their AC cranking, and summer storms caused lightning that led to one of the largest blackouts in American history. And that night, the lights went out on the city that never sleeps. Over 10 million people were without power, and normal life just sort of ground to a halt. Play was suspended at the bottom of the sixth at Shea Stadium, with the Mets being down 2-1 to the Cubs. Beneath the city, there were 4,000 people trapped in the subway system that had to be evacuated, while chaos reigned on the streets above. By the time the power came on the next morning, over 1,600 stores had been damaged by rioting and looting. Firemen responded to over 1,000 fires, and there'd been 4,000 people arrested. Con Ed Power called it an act of God that led to the blackout. But godless behavior was just reigning supreme on the darkened streets of the city. Darkness has a way of enabling the worst in us. In our efforts to satisfy our flesh, we can seek out the cover of darkness to conceal our secret sin. But sin is revealed and darkness is destroyed in the presence of the light. In John 8, Jesus declared himself. He said, "I am the light of the world." As John wrote about Christ coming into the world in John 1, he wrote this. He said, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." And on that night in John 3, when Nicodemus came to visit Jesus, to talk with him, Jesus said this to him. He said, "And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and the people love the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light, but does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed." You know, in the brightness of Jesus, we can see our sinfulness, and we know there's nowhere to hide. While life in the darkness can be self-indulgent, it can also be very scary. Life in the light, though, is full of delightful denials, denying our flesh and embracing God's truth, because there's nothing scary and nothing destructive about that. So, Good Life, let me ask you today, is your life marked by His light? Or are there some choices and some behaviors in your life that you'd rather keep under the cover of darkness? And that's an important question for you to answer. It's an important question for me to answer. But I'll put to you that the implications of that question are bigger than you or me. The light of Christ didn't go back with him to heaven. No, he passed that light on to us. He says, "You are the light of the world." And he tells us we should live in such a way that his light shines on those who are trapped in darkness. He says, "You are a city on the hill that can't be hidden." So, Good Life, let me ask you, is your light shining to those who are trapped in darkness? We are called to be a people who will love enough to share the good news as we share our lives as well. But we can't share the good news if we are delighting in darkness, and we are dimming our light if we are running to the darkness to conceal sins we'd rather not be revealed. So the question for all of us is this: are we being the light that Jesus has called us to be? And are the people that we know, the people we're sharing life with that don't know Jesus, are they able to see the glimmer of hope and the light of Christ in us? They're trapped in darkness. They are slaves to sin and dead in their transgressions. But you and I have been tasked with being the light of the world to people like them. So, Good Life, are we delighting in the light? And are we living lives that point people to Jesus Christ? Hope that encourages you and challenges you today as much as it does me. I love you guys. I miss you guys. And we'll see you tomorrow at 128.